Hello, everyone. Mr. Krauser here, giving you some information, although brief, about the Mexican American War. Now, this is primarily in case you need a quick refresher, if you missed something, even if you missed a class, but it in no way replaces what we've talked about with our class discussions and the lecture that was given in class, okay? But with that being said, this should hopefully be helpful for you, all right? So we're talking about the Mexican-American War. We've talked about all the things that were leading up to this, and the storms are really brewing at this point, and it's going to become an issue. If you recall, during the Texas Revolution, the Mexicans rebelled against Spain, essentially kicked Spain out, much like what was going on in North America when the colonies kicked England out. And so now you have Mexico. And Mexico was actually much larger back then than it is today. And part of that's because they had Texas, they had California, they had that southwest region. And that's what we're going to discuss today is how did they lose that? And more importantly, what was America's part in them losing that? All right, so we're going to skip over the do now. You can read it quickly, and the slides will be online for you if you want to remember or refresh yourself with what we talked about. But the connections that we were really making and some essential questions is why was Mexico bothered by American expansion? Remember, this is the whole idea of manifest destiny, of the United States are destined by God, and it's obvious, manifest, it's plain, it's clear that the United States, the Americans, should take over this entire continent. And even previously, they tried to take over more of Canada, but it didn't really work out. But now they're starting to spread westward more and more and more, and it runs into this issue of, oh, there's already people living there. And by that, I don't mean Native Americans. That's a big issue in and of itself, because we take land from the Native Americans, but what we're focusing on now is Mexicans were already living there. People that were formerly of the Spanish territories, which included Mexico, which included California, which included this southwest region that we're going to see in a map in a moment. And so, why might Mexico be bothered by manifest destiny when they see that the United States are slowly but surely creeping westward? I think that answer is pretty obvious. It's manifest, pun intended. Because if they see that Americans are expanding westward and they're kicking out Native Americans and they're kicking out other people groups and they want to just grab as much land as possible, the whole sea to shining sea ideology going on, then the Mexicans are going to start being worried. They're going to start seeing this trend and they're going to know that something's going to come up. Now, another essential question is Mexico never recognized Texan independence. How do you think they felt when the United States annexed it? And why do you think they felt that way? Imagine it for a moment. From their perspective, they invited white settlers down into Texas, which was part of Mexico. They invite them down there. Those white settlers end up rebelling. And Texas essentially becomes, not essentially, literally becomes the Republic of Texas, the Lone Star State, for approximately 10 years. But meanwhile, Mexico never actually recognized that they were independent. They still thought it was part of their land. So then 10 years later, when the United States declares, this is now part of our country, we have annexed it, meaning we have added it, we have joined it to our union, key word there. We've added this. Mexico's then going to be like, whoa, slow your roll there. You can't add something that's already added to us. Otherwise, that's theft, and we're going to go to war because of theft. Right, so just keep that in the back of your mind. That might be how the Mexicans are feeling. Now, you could debate whether or not that's legitimate, but that's not for us to talk about right now. Now, For America, how do you think the Alamo played into the controversy regarding annexing Texas and other Mexican lands? Remember the whole cry, remember the Alamo, when those white settlers down in Texas were fighting off Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna, the Mexican leader at that point. Mexican president, I guess you can say. Many other people will say dictator, but regardless, they go there and they hold him off for a long time, but they essentially lost that. Even though they were able to hold him off, they lost a lot of people. And so Americans remembered that. And now it's possible that they're having this battle cry of remember the Alamo, of they did that to us, so who cares if we take their land? And lastly, it's important to know, this isn't so much a question, but very important point, that the United States does offer to pay $5 million to settle the dispute over Texas, and up to $30 million to purchase California. James Polk is going to send a guy named Slidell over there, but Mexico is going to be pretty insulted and not even accept Slidell, not even talk to Slidell. So they're not even going to entertain the offer. And so America is going to feel offended that they're not even listening to the offer, whereas Mexico is going to feel offended that they're even entertaining the idea that they're going to give up this land when part of it, the Texas area, was and still is to their mind a part of them. All right, so we're going to move on from there. Now, here's some important causes of the Mexican-American War. And this is going to show up on quizzes and tests, so it's important for you to know. Number one, we already discussed it, Mexico never recognized Texan independence. So they clearly do not like it when the United States is going to annex, another key word, remember, annex means to join to the Union, to add to it, what they believe to be their land. Mexico's going to hate that. It's as if you own something right now. Let's say you own an iPhone or some fancy gizmo, and I go up to you and I take it. You're going to be upset at that. Whereas I'm going to claim, well, it's not really yours anymore because you dropped it or somebody else was holding it at the moment. Whereas you're going to say, no, just because somebody else was holding it or just because I dropped it or just because I left it somewhere, it's not finders keepers. Because it's still my property. It's still mine. And Mexico was very much feeling that way of it's still my land. You can't take it. You can't add what's already added to us. You can't add what's not been ripped out from us. So they're going to kind of see it as theft. Number two, the second cause, is this idea of manifest destiny, another huge key term which we've kind of beaten a dead horse at this one. Now, manifest destiny is this idea of expansion. They're tied together. That America, it's destined for them by God to go out from sea to shining sea and gather up more land and be a great nation and cover the continent. And Mexico's going to fear that United States policy. And many people will argue that rightfully so. Now again, you could be on America's side during this time, or you can be on the Mexican side at this time, and they both have legitimate reasons for what they're bringing up. So I don't want to be biased at any sense of the word. I don't want to skew you one way or the other, all right? You guys take the information and then you decide for yourself whether or not you believe this is a just war. And that's something that we've talked about and discussed in class. And no matter what history class you're in, a lot of times that's going to be the essay question, or that's going to be the main question, is the Mexican-American War even justified? Should America even gone into war? And it's a good question. The third cause of the Mexican-American War is economics. Again, almost all throughout history, you're always going to deal with economics or power or money. Something's always going to be tied to that. Now, many people in the United States who wanted to expand, who were expansionists, people who believe this idea of manifest destiny, wanted the resources and lands of California, including its harbors. Now, California, if you've ever been there, if you've ever seen a map, or you watch some surfing commercial and where they're in California, you know that it's located on water, on an ocean. That's very valuable. It's very different from being in Kansas where there's no ocean around you, where you can't have any water ports. Whereas in California, you can. So you can send out and you could be a harbor that exports and imports goods, which can make it a very big city, something like San Francisco and these other areas. In addition, There's obviously going to be the California Gold Rush of 1848 and 1849. That's going to play into it. So economics is huge because many people in America are thinking about American interests of expanding in order to increase their resource and wealth. The fourth cause of the Mexican-American War that we're talking about is the boundary dispute. Now, regardless of the fact that Mexico doesn't even recognize the Texan independence and then doesn't even recognize that America added Texas, there was a boundary dispute going on as to what the southern border of Texas was. Now, Mexico is going to claim that the southern border of Texas was the Nueces River, important to note, while the United States is going to claim that it's the Rio Grande River, or Grande, I don't know how to pronounce these things. So once Texas was annexed to the United States, James Polk, the president at this time, important to know, is going to send troops into that disputed territory. And Mexico's going to demand that they leave, because to Mexico, they think you're in our territory, whereas to America, they're going to think, no, this is our territory, when in retrospect, it was the disputed territory. And so when the American troops don't leave, Mexico's going to attack, which is going to make James Polk, President Polk's case for war much easier to make, because he's going to be able to, in his address and declaration of war, to say that Mexico invaded America and killed our soldiers, when in reality, what we know through history is it wasn't so much as an invasion as it was Mexico sent out their troops in the disputed territory, and they thought that it was their land, whereas America thought, no, this is our land. So it was a, no, it's mine, no, it's mine, no, it's mine, no, it's mine, back and forth. And here you're going to see a map of where these rivers actually were. So again, the Nueces River is what the Mexicans were claiming was the southern boundary of Texas. So they thought that this disputed area here was theirs, whereas America thinks it's the Rio Grande River right here, and so they're going to think that this whole disputed area is theirs. So you can see the issue there, whereas James Polk is going to send troops into this disputed area, where Mexico thinks that's our land, and America's thinking, no, it's our land. So both are going to be thinking that you're invading our land, when in reality, it's what they were arguing about. If I had to choose, I would say no one owned this land yet because they were disputing over it and they haven't settled it yet. They haven't settled that argument. And so when the troops come in, Mexico sends their troops upward, right where this cursor is, and there's going to be a battle there, and white soldiers are going to die, and that's going to make President Polk's case much stronger for war. And here's just another map, perhaps even closer. Again, the Rio Grande River is the border where America thought that this is, and they believed vehemently, this is the border. So anything below that, yes, is Mexico, but anything above that is American territory. Whereas Mexico was thinking it's the Nueces River, right? So there's this huge piece of land that they're really not sure whose it is. America believes one thing, Mexico believes another thing, and it becomes a big, big issue. And this is really the event that sparks the war of Polk sending troops down and then Mexico saying leave. The troops don't leave, so then Mexico fires on those troops and kills some of them. So that's important to note, but it's also important to know that even back then, because right now it's easy for us to look upon that and automatically be on one side or the other. And usually people are going to be able to see that America was in the wrong. That's usually the predominant feeling, at least today. But war was not unanimous at home either back then. Not every American wanted to go to war. In fact, many believed that it was unjust. Even John C. Calhoun said, "Mexico is to us the forbidden fruit. The penalty of eating it would be to subject our institutions to political death." That's John C. Calhoun saying that. That's an actual quote. In addition, Abraham Lincoln, in what's known as the Spot Resolution, important keyword, a young Abraham Lincoln wanted Polk's administration to announce the exact spot where the Mexicans attacked so that they could decide if the attack was really on U.S. soil or not. That's called the Spot Resolution. Ultimately, nobody really listens to Lincoln. Nobody does the Spot Resolution. Less than a year after the war even, the House of Representatives is going to draft a resolution that labels the war as, quote, unnecessarily and unconstitutionally begun by the President of the United States of America. And that's why they give this war the nickname Mr. Polk's War. See ya.